So nested records allow us to set up sub-record relationships between two records. So we can say that one record is the child of another. And in that sort of relationship, the child record really belongs to the parent record. So if the parent record was to be deleted, the child record would get deleted along with it. Relationships are a somewhat weaker relationship. So a relationship exists between two top-level records. And a relationship can have its own properties. So, for example, we might have a relationship between two agents that indicates that one agent is a subsidiary company of another. I'm in the JSON schema file for accession here, and you can see on line 57 we have a property called subjects, which is defined to be an array, and it's an array of JSON model subject URIs. So what that means is an incoming accession can have an array of references to subjects, and one subject can be referred to by many different records, and many different records can refer to many different subjects. So there's no sense in which a subject belongs to a single record or vice versa. So if we scroll down a little bit, we'll find linked agents, and so this allows us to link agent records to a given accession. And note that this is also a relationship type. It's got a subtype of ref, which is our indicator, and you can see here that this relationship has other properties. So a relationship between an accession and an agent can have a role, it can have a relator, and then finally we have our ref, which is the reference, the URI reference to a given agent record. Let's jump to the accession model now and find how these relationships are implemented. So this is the accession model, and you can see we say include subjects, which is a mix-in. So let's jump to our mix-ins directory and see how subjects are implemented. So subjects are a link between an accession record and a subject record in this case. So you can see there's not very much code here, so we say when the subjects mix-in is include the relationships mix-in, and then define a relationship on the original model, such as accession, called subject, which is going to map the JSON property subjects to references of type subject. So this is effectively going to set up the behavior that means that when an accession comes in, we're going to link the database record for that accession to the subjects that it references. So the relationships mix-in gives us a lot of behavior for free, and it's a very common pattern in ArchivesSpace. We could do this by defining a separate model for each relationship. So we could define a model called accession subject, for example, and then just set up one-to-one relationships on that model between the accession and the subject we're interested in linking to. And that is effectively what define relationship does. So for each define relationship definition, the ArchivesSpace system will generate a dynamic model that it will use for mapping those relationships. And the key thing is that these relationships appear everywhere, so all of our different models use relationships in some form or another, and we would end up with a huge number of these relationship models. So the nice thing about this mix-in, the relationship mix-in, is that it allows us to declaratively say that this is the relationship between these two records and not have to worry about doing all of those models by hand. And it comes with other advantages, so we can, for example, very easily find out which other objects a given model refers to. So relationships are the facility that let records in ArchivesSpace refer to one another. And if I jump back to my terminal, and I'm just going to do a get on the accession I created in the very first screencast, you can see we have a property called repository, which contains a ref to repositories too. So this was a relationship. One of the key things about relationships, and about the ArchivesSpace API in general, is that we generally don't want to have to do lots of get requests to get the information we want. So it wouldn't be feasible if the front end to show a number of records had to do a get for every relationship or every subrecords. So what we do instead with relationships is have this notion of resolving. So you can see here I've just got the same get command, and it's going to get the same accession, but I've got this extra parameter that says resolve repository. And that's going to... And so since ArchivesSpace knows about relationships, it's going to look at that repository, realize that it's a relationship, and then look up that record and inline it. So if I run this again, you can see we've got this extra property under repository now called _resolved, and that's the to-JSON model, or SQL to JSON model representation of the record that was referenced. So this gives the front end a convenient way of pulling back a record and any bits of interest that it needs to display without having to make lots and lots of nested requests.